for the Palestinian people. I would like to acknowledge who is here with us today is our Deputy Minister of DIRCO, Mr. Alvin Buertes, here sitting up here at the front. Her Excellency Hanan Gerard, the Ambassador of the State of Palestine over there. Honorable Mandla Mandela from the National Assembly. Mr. Masimba Tafaranyika from the United Nations Information Center. And I'd also like to welcome the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, His Excellency Salih Omar Abdu, as well. So ladies and gentlemen, we gather here today to express our unwavering solidarity with the people of Palestine in their quest for justice, freedom, and self-determination. But I have to say that this year, more than any other year since the Nakba occurred in 75 years ago, the Palestinian people need our support and the support of the international community as never before. We all watch our television screens, and we all know that over the past 7.5 weeks, we have watched genocide unfold on our television screens. And unfortunately, the situation only gets worse by the day. I want you to think about this. We all know it, but just to think about it. When over 3/4 of the hospitals in Gaza no longer function due to Israeli bombardment, when bakeries, the last source for many of food, are bombed, and when water tanks and solar panels, some of the last remaining water sources and electricity sources for the Palestinians in Gaza, are bombed. And when we have over 70,000 residential homes destroyed, UN schools bombed, where thousands of homeless Palestinians have been sheltering, we know that we are seeing a genocide unfold before us, and it has become obvious, increasingly obvious to the world. UN special rapporteurs have said from the beginning, starting with Francesca Albanese, the UN special rapporteur on Palestine, that she warned us in the first week or two that we are going to see a mass ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, and she warned that what we needed was an immediate ceasefire. And since then, 2 weeks ago, we had the UN special rapporteurs talking about the increasing evidence of genocidal incitement with an overt intent to destroy the Palestinian people. What I found particularly interesting is one of the leading Holocaust historians from Brown University in the US, his name is Omar Bartov. He talked a lot about what was happening, what he observed happening on his television screen in Gaza. And interestingly, he said, genocide begins with the words intent to destroy. And he said what really concerns him is that when he watches what is happening on the ground in Gaza, there's no question that there is genocidal intent. That's quite powerful coming from a Holocaust professor that is known around the world. We all know, and I won't repeat it, what the Defense Minister of Israel, Yoav Gallant, said at the outset of this war, what he was going to do to Gaza. And he said that we are dealing with human animals, and we will act accordingly. And we know, if we learn the lessons of history, when people use that type of language, it's usually with an intent to eradicate people or a group of people in whole or in part. And that is, I think, that dehumanization of people, referring to them as animals, is unacceptable. And the pushback against that type of genocidal language must be strong and unforgiving. So we have seen, as we all know, ordinary people from around the world, from as far away as South Korea to Chile, marching in the hundreds of thousands against what they are seeing happening in Gaza and the indiscriminate slaughter of civilians. But I will say, without getting into the numbers change every day of the dead and the wounded, is that beyond the number of people who have been killed, it actually masks the true extent of this tragedy, because it's the thousands of people who are being trapped under the rubble, who do not even have the hope of being rescued by heavy moving machinery as they were in Turkey and Syria after the earthquake. They were just trapped there. There's no one to rescue them, and they lie there most of them probably injured for weeks or days, or if not 10 days or a week or more before they die. And I think that's a tragedy that we haven't witnessed on our television screens. As the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, Gaza has become a graveyard of children. Almost half the victims in this war have been children, Palestinian children, with, they say, an estimated child dies every 10 minutes in Gaza. And what really is most heartbreaking to me is that the most vulnerable in the society, which are the newborn babies, their death certificates are being issued before their birth certificates. So we salute those governments around the world that have put themselves on the right side of history and who have spoken out against what is just unacceptable violations of international law. Sadly, they're few and far between. Too many have given their unconditional support to Israel for what it's doing, if not provided financial and arms to them, which really needs to stop. We have been calling for an international arms embargo on all the parties. As South Africa, we have joined with a number of other countries as state parties to the Rome Statute in making a joint referral to the ICC of the situation in Palestine. And really what I would like to say about that is we cannot allow Gaza to not only become a graveyard for children, but also for international law. We categorically reject the myopic and distorted international responses that ignore the context and the root causes of this war. And all of us here, we know what that is. That is occupation and ethnic cleansing that have gone on for over 7 decades. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, what I would like to say, Palestinians are not children of a lesser God. Every Palestinian life matters just as much as anyone else's life. And it's incumbent on all of us here to do something in our own way to stop this carnage as soon as possible. We refuse to stand by and watch as every red line in war is crossed and this region potentially descends into death and destruction in a zero-sum game. The fact that all of you are here and we are all standing in solidarity with the Palestinians means that we are affirming our commitment to a world where justice prevails, where individuals can live in dignity, and where the hope for a peaceful coexistence is not just a dream, but it can be a tangible reality. And on that note, I'd like to ask you all to stand for a moment of silence in memory of all those who have lost their lives. Thank you. We will now have the national anthems of both Palestine and South Africa, so if you can remain standing. Thank you.
بعزمي وناري وبركان ثاري وأشواق دمي بعصف الرياح ونار السلاح وإصرار شعبي بخوض الكفاح فلسطين داري وأرض انتصار فلسطين داري وأرض السرور فلسطين داري وأرض انتصار فلسطين داري وأرض السرور بحق القسم تحت ظل العلم بأرضي وشعبي ونار الألم سأحيا فدائي وأمضي فدائي وأمضي فدائي إلى أن أموت سأحيا فدائي وأمضي فدائي وأمضي فدائي إلى أن أموت فدائي 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 يا أرضي يا أرض الجنود فدائي 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 يا شعبي يا شعب القلوب فدائي 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 يا أرضي يا أرض الجنود فدائي 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 يا شعبي يا شعب القلوب.
Thank you. Please be seated. My colleague from the Palestine Embassy said I was very amiss that I didn't introduce myself. My name is Shannon Ibrahim, and I'm working at the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. I would now like to invite Ms. Jane Mafmadi to the stage to ask her. She is the CEO of of Freedom Park, and she'd like to say a few words, and we'd like to thank you for hosting us here.
Thank you, Program Director. I would like to acknowledge the Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Mr. Alvin Botes, Your Excellency, Ambassador of the State of Palestine to the Republic of South Africa, Ms. Hanan Jarrah, Mr. Masimba Tafarinika, representing the United Nations, our Member of Parliament, member of the Freedom Park family, Honorable Nkosi Mandla Mandela, Your Excellency, Ambassador of Lebanon in South Africa, Mr. Kabalan Frangia, also representing the Council of Arab Ambassadors, Ambassador Ashraf Suleiman, Mr. Mohammed Fatima, Ambassadors, Your Excellencies, High Commissioners, members of the Diplomatic Corps, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you on behalf of Freedom Park Management and Council. Today we gather here on the occasion of the United Nations International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, a day that calls upon us to reflect on the enduring struggles faced by the Palestinian people and to reaffirm our commitment to a just and lasting resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It is a day to stand in solidarity, to stand in empathy and compassion, recognizing the human rights and the dignity of all individuals in that region. The Palestinian people have faced decades of hardship, displacement, and a challenging quest for self-determination. This year, we commemorate this day under difficult circumstances, as the program director indicated. We must not forget the impact of the ongoing conflict on innocent civilians, particularly the women and children, who continue to bear the brunt of the violence and instability. Freedom Park, being a monument to human dignity, human rights, and freedom, we being a memorial to those who sacrificed their lives to secure liberty, we cannot ignore the plight of the Palestinians and their quest for freedom. While commemorating this day in 1997, Madiba said, and I quote, "The temptation in our situation is to speak in muffled tones about the issues such as the right of the people of Palestine. We can easily be enticed to read reconciliation and fairness as meaning parity between justice and injustice. Having achieved our own freedom, we can fall into the trap of washing our hands of difficulties that others face. Yet, we will be less than human if we did so. It behoves all South Africans, themselves erstwhile beneficiaries of generous international support, to stand up and be counted among those contributing actively to the cause of freedom and justice," I close quote. It is crucial for the international community to reiterate its support for, as our government has said, for a two-state solution where Israel and Palestine can coexist side by side in peace and security. The pursuit of a just and comprehensive resolution requires the commitment of all parties involved, as well as the engagement and support of the global community. I think as South Africans in particular, on this day, we acknowledge the humanitarian challenges faced by the Palestinian people. And we urge the international community to continue to provide assistance and support to alleviate the suffering of those affected, especially ensuring access to basic necessities such as healthcare, education, and adequate living conditions. It is common knowledge that our South African history of colonialism and apartheid, as well as our national and international struggle for freedom and humanity, have parallels with the Palestinian liberation struggle against occupation. against discrimination and human rights abuses. We understand better than anyone what it is like to suffer while the world is watching. When even those who preach universal human rights are silent, that is when you realize that some indeed are more equal than others, that the concept of freedom, equality, and justice is a fallacy only reserved for the chosen few. Therefore, our relations are grounded in a common purpose to remove the yoke of oppression. And once more, I quote our patron in chief as I conclude, Madiba, when in the same speech he says, "We know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians." As Freedom Park, a monument to freedom and liberty, but as South Africans, as a South African myself, we want to appeal to the world to fight for freedom of all, for a just world, for peace and stability in the world. When others are not free, we all are not free. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to now invite the Ambassador of Palestine, Her Excellency Hanan Gerard, to come to the stage. And as she comes, I just wanted to say that I know this has been a very difficult time for you to watch your people suffering as they have been. And I just want you to know that everyone in this room, we are here with you.
Thank you, Shannon, our friend, Program Director. His Excellency Alvin Boutis, Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation for the Republic of South Africa, Honorable Mandla Mandela, United Nations Representative Mr. Masemba Tiffany, Ms. Jane Mafadi, COA of Freedom Park, Acting Dean of the Arab Ambassadors, His Excellency Kaplan Franji, Ambassador Ashraf Sulaiman from DERCO, ambassadors and colleagues from the diplomatic corps, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, comrades, friends, all protocols observed. Masal khair, good afternoon. I stand here today at a dark time for the Palestinian people and for humanity. And as a human being, I also stand here with a heavy and shattered heart. For the past 50 days, Israel has been bombing innocent civilians, newborn babies in incubators, United Nations staff, journalists, aid workers, refugee camps, hospitals, and places of worship. And then, with a straight face, it has the audacity to tell the world that it is acting in accordance to international law under the pretext of self-defense. The killing of more than 15,000 Palestinians over the last 50 days, according to Israel, was justified. 15,000. That is more than just a number. 15,000 human beings, 15,000 lives and souls, 15,000 dreams, wishes, and hopes. There are more than 60 families that have been completely wiped out from the civil registry. More than 1,500,000 Palestinians have been forcibly displaced. According to international humanitarian law, this can amount to a war crime. Any nation espousing this wrapped logic of, and those who support and enable this type of thinking, has no shred of humanity, no sense of morality, and allow me to say, no knowledge of international law. On November 20, the world commemorated Universal Children's Day. Us Palestinians would like to remind those in centers of power, especially those who preach and theorize about children's rights, that they remain silent while thousands of Palestinian children have been massacred non-stop for 50 days. Not only have they remained silent, but some of them, unfortunately, have even offered complete immunity to those responsible for this mass slaughter. As we enter the United Nations campaign of 16 days of no violence against women and children, we must remember that it is Palestinian women and children who are the main targets of the Israeli occupation, especially now in Gaza. However, freedom-loving nations in the global south and peace-loving people from around the globe see through Israel's propaganda. It is the same lies that Israel used during its previous 6 military aggressions on Gaza in the last 15 years. Many of you here today have seen Israel resort to collective punishment, the deliberate targeting of Palestinian children, journalists, medical staff, and aid workers before. We have seen Israel forcibly transfer Palestinians, colonize our lands, demolish our homes, and evict our families from their own properties since the 7th of October and for the 75 years that preceded it. You have seen Israel's state-sponsored disinformation campaigns, which remind you of similar tactics that were used against your freedom fighters by the apartheid South African regime. The millions of people filling streets in every major city in the world, from every race, religion, and ethnicity, from grassroots solidarity groups and young activists to high-level diplomats and government officials, see through Israel's PR and disinformation. Since day one of Israel's genocidal war against our people in Gaza, South Africans from different walks of life, religions, and political parties have taken to the streets to show solidarity and support for our people. Moving to the governmental level, His Excellency President Ramaphosa has rightly called what is happening in Gaza a genocide. South Africa has referred Israel to the ICC for investigation of the situation in Palestine, in accordance to Palestine's referral to the ICC in 2018. Minister Naledi Pandor has been central in discussions to reactivate legal instruments that were developed by the international community as weapons in South Africa's struggle against apartheid, so that it might be able to address the manifestations of apartheid in Palestine. Last week, the South African Parliament showed the Palestinian people again and again that their commitment to a free Palestine is strong and unwavering by voting to close the Israeli embassy and sever ties with apartheid Israel. This support, combined with the resilience and steadfastness of the Palestinians back home in occupied Palestine and in exile, is what keeps the flames of the Palestinian narrative alive. This is the type of the international solidarity that Palestinians require to dismantle the Israeli colonial expansionist regime. What is needed now is a collective call from the international community for a ceasefire and for an end to the Israeli occupation, so that Palestinians can finally exercise their right to self-determination and to establish their own independent state on the borders of 1967 with East Jerusalem as its capital. We need a vigorous campaign of international solidarity, pressure, and support, similar to those that ultimately brought the apartheid regime in South Africa down. The failure to end Israel's occupation of Palestine and secure Palestinian peace and freedom is a stain on the conscience of the world. But the genocide of the last 50 days should be viewed as an opportunity for the world to redeem itself and hold the Israeli government accountable for its serial violations of human rights and international law. The world can no longer look away and allow Israel to violate Palestinian human rights with impunity. It cannot repeat the mistakes of the past. It looks very ironic what I'm going to say now, but as our Dr. Hanan Ashrawi said, I quote, "We Palestinians are the only people on earth asked to guarantee the security of our occupier, while Israel is the only country that calls for self-defense from its victims. Yet, Palestinians, we are like phoenix. Despite the atrocities and darkness that we have faced for more than 7 decades now, we still have the ability to rise up from the ashes and fly again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I would now like to ask Ambassador of Lebanon, Kabilan Frangia, who is speaking on behalf of the Arab Council, to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shannon. Your Excellency, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Alvin Botas, Mr. Mandla Mandela, Your Excellency, Ambassador of Palestine, our dear friend. Let me at the outset start by saying that the Embassy of Palestine here is supported by the Arab group. You have our full support in all the efforts you are doing, and we completely condemn the threats that you have been receiving since the beginning of the war. We as Arab ambassadors in South Africa, I am happy to say that we are proud to be accredited to a country like South Africa. South Africa has been the biggest supporter of the Palestinian cause since the end of apartheid. South Africa is not matched by any country on the planet in its unconditional support of the Palestinian cause. And we as Arab ambassadors are humbled to be present in the country that feels with us as much as South Africa feels with us. I think the deep feeling that lies in fighting the apartheid here of the idea that people deserve to live free in their land is the main reason why South Africa knows what the Palestinian people are going through. That deep feeling is a humanitarian feeling. It's not a Palestinian, it's not a South African, it's not an Arab, it's not an Muslim, it's not a Christian, it's not a Jewish feeling. That feeling that we are all feeling now, and that we see people waking up and feeling it like us, is a feeling that we are one in values, we are one in what we think is right and what we think is wrong. And South Africa is a non-Arab, non-Muslim country that makes us feel and only proves that we are one in values and one in accepting and respecting human values. Having said that, I would like to go to a further maybe dimension and talk a little bit about, since I'm representing the Arab countries and not only my country, about what this war means to us. I think in 1948, the year of the Declaration of Human Rights, is also the year of the catastrophe, what we call in Arabic the Nakba. So the catastrophe is a catastrophe since 1948, and today is amplified. It is still a catastrophe. We did not call it for no reason a catastrophe. And we saw 750,000 Palestinians move and displaced to the countries which are around Palestine, including my country, including the Jordan, Egypt, and other countries, Syria. We have seen another setback. Some people call it defeat. It's the Naksa of 1967, where another time Palestinian people were displaced to Lebanon, to Jordan, to Syria, to Egypt, and other countries around the world. They haven't chosen this. They are victims, but now we are trying to convince the world that no, 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 they are really victims. After 75 years, it's like someone is starting to, watch a movie from season 5. No, there is the catastrophe that is still ongoing. There is an Aqsa that displaced other people, and now they are trying to do the same thing again and again, and they want us to accept. They want Egypt, they want Jordan, they want Lebanon, they want these countries to accept another transfer to protect civilians. They want us to let go of the idea that people can live free in their land. They want us to let go of our humanity. This is what means accepting the transfer again of the Palestinian people. Griffith, the Undersecretary for Humanitarian Affairs, said this is the worst ever. This is his word. He compared it to the Khmer Rouge and said this is worse than what happened during the Khmer Rouge. He also said this is a global crisis, a humanity crisis. So what's unfolding in Palestine, it's not connected to a region, it's not connected to a people, a race, or a religion. It is really a global humanitarian crisis, and we have to deal with it as such. Not to mention by starting yesterday, to have a ceasefire, and not the truth. Since yesterday it should be. If we are not to stand up, if we are just to be ourselves, and seeing those images in our TVs, they are asking us to be accomplice when we are not asking for a ceasefire. What we are seeing now is not seen before since decades, according to United Nations experts who have not only been speaking up, but who have been raising the alarm that we are going from a catastrophe to another catastrophe. Now we are afraid of Palestinian children dying from hunger, not from bombs, if we continue as such without a ceasefire. It's another level. This is a next level kind of catastrophe, where we are not only worried about those tons and hundreds of tons of bombs, but we are worried that thousands of kids will die of hunger, so, in front of our eyes. I don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to thank South Africa and thank, through you, our dear friend Alvin, the President and the government and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and your team and the Middle East Department and everyone, Shannon, you too, for your support for Palestine on behalf of the Arab group, not only on behalf of myself. And this is from the bottom bottom of the heart.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We're now going to do something quite emotional and meaningful, and I would like to ask Fatima Tuz Mohammed, who's 10 years old, and Aisha Ghani, who is 9 years old, to come and stand here with me in the front. And as they come up, I'll just give a prelude to the poem that they are going to recite. They're going to recite a poem, but before you do that, I wanted to just say, I'm sure most of us in the room have children. I have 2 children. In the lives of my children who are 15 and 17, I may have watched them write something on their hand when they wanted to remember something. What I can't imagine is myself writing on their hand or on their leg, because I assume that in the next days or weeks they are likely to be killed and nobody will know them and they will end up in an unmarked grave. I don't think any of us as parents can imagine what that must be like. And we are one common humanity. There are people on the other side of the world. I was there just a day, I was actually there when the war started with Ambassador Suleiman. And we could have never thought that people just kilometers away from us when we were in Ramallah would be writing on their children's arms and legs because nobody would know that they had died. So this is the poem that these girls are going to recite for you. Fatima Tuz Mohammed and Aisha Ghani, the poem that they will recite is Write My Name. It's by Zaina Azam, a Palestinian American poet, and you can hold the mic.
Write my name on my leg, Mama. Write my name on my leg, Mama. Use the black permanent marker with the ink that doesn't bleed if it gets wet. The one that doesn't melt if it's exposed to heat.
Write my name on my leg, Mama. Make the lines thick and clear. Add your special flourishes so I can take comfort in seeing my mama's handwriting when I go to sleep.
Write my name on my leg, Mama, and on the legs of my sisters and brothers. This way we will belong together. This way we will be known as your children.
Write my name on my leg, Mama, and please write your name and Baba's name on your legs too, so we will be remembered as a family.
Write my name on my leg, Mama. Don't add any numbers, like when I was born or the address of our home. I don't want the world to list me as a number. I have a name and I am not a number.
Write my name on my leg, Mama. When the bomb hits our home, when the walls crush our skulls and bones, our legs will tell the story of how there was nowhere for us to run.
Thank you, girls, and thank you for your solidarity with the Palestinian children. I was very much hoping that we would hear from some children about what is happening to children. Thank you. You can be seated. It is really my great honor this morning to introduce our keynote speaker, the Honorable Mandla Mandela from our National Assembly. He's not only one of our most powerful parliamentarians, but he is an incredible human rights activist. And as we all know, the grandson of our former statesman and founding president Nelson Mandela. Mandla, you have continued your grandfather's legacy in consistently expressing your solidarity for the Palestinian people for freedom, justice, and liberation. We remember when your grandfather said, and we all know this quote, "We know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians." And I just want to say, Mandla, that you have been one of the loudest voices in our country in support of the Palestinians, and I'd like to thank you for that and welcome you to the stage.
Thank you, Program Director. In times like this, I want to slip up and say competition, but allow me to thank the Program Director, Ms. Shannon Ibrahim, the Honorable Deputy Minister of International Relations, Mr. Alvin Cortes, the Director of the UN Center of Information, Mr. Masimba Kapireika, Her Excellency, the Ambassador of the State of Palestine, Ms. Hannah Jar, Her Excellency, His Excellency Mr. Kabalan, who stands on behalf of the Council of Arab Ambassadors, but is also the ambassador to Lebanon, my comrade and brother, Ambassador Ashraf Suleiman, whom I had the privilege of praying with at Al-Aqsa, and may we all soon return to a liberated Al-Aqsa and a free Palestine. Last but not least, let me acknowledge the CEO of Freedom Park, Ms. Jane Mukumadi, all the ambassadors that are here this afternoon, dignitaries represented, our respected members of the media, the honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, and comrades and friends. And for those that I've come short in recognizing, let me say all protocol observed. Good afternoon, Kuyemnida, Molweni, Dumelang, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I greet you with the greetings of peace, justice, and human dignity for all. Allow me, Program Director, to dedicate this speech to the memory of the finest friendship forged in the struggle between Comrade President Yasser Arafat and our global icon, His Excellency President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, whose 10th year anniversary of his passing we will be commemorating in a few days on the 5th of December, 2023. Comrades and friends, I am humbled to be afforded this singular honor and must admit that I was tempted in my long list of acknowledgements to recognize the two foot soldiers of Palestine who are no longer with us, but whose presence I feel today. Comrade Ibrahim and Comrade Aziz Fahad. May their souls rest in peace and in the presence of the martyrs of Palestine from the onset of the occupation, and especially those who have joined the ranks of the highest honor since the 7th of October 2023 events. In the spirit of the United Nations International Day of Solidarity with Palestine, which was first declared in 1977 and then first observed 45 years ago in 1978. I want to invoke the words uttered by Comrade President Yasser Arafat during the period of his visit to South Africa to attend the inauguration of the first president of a democratically free South Africa on the 10th of May in 1994. Speaking at the mosque in Johannesburg, he said these historic words, and I quote, The jihad will continue, and Jerusalem is not for the Palestinian people. It is for all Muslim Ummah, all the Muslim Ummah. You are responsible for Palestine and for Jerusalem before me, close quote. I am not known for speaking in riddles, comrades and friends, or beating around the bush. So I want to make a few remarks regarding this almost prophetic statement by Comrade President Yasser Arafat, and by reminding you what Madiba said on this very occasion of International Solidarity Day with the Palestinian people on the 4th of December, 1997, and I quote, "The temptation in our situation is to speak in muffled tones about an issue such as the right of the people of Palestine to a state of their own. We can easily be enticed to read reconciliation and fairness as meaning parity between justice and injustice. Having achieved our own freedom, we can fall into the trap of washing our hands of difficulties that others faces. Yet we would be less than human if we did so, close quote. But one that I truly want to leave you with today, again from my grandfather, he used to say to us as a family, as long as there is a single human being suffering in the world, our work is far from over. Ladies and gentlemen, the events of the last few weeks have given gravitas to those words of President Arafat. The struggle continues. It continues in Gaza, and it continues in the West Bank. It continues all over occupied Palestine. From the broken bodies of babies buried under rubble, the horrors of the Holocaust visited on innocent, sheltering in mosques, churches, and hospitals. The constant barrage of graphic images on social media platforms of young children running helter-skelter from corpse to corpse in search of a mother, a sibling, a beloved granny, a genocide, comrades and friends, is unfolding in full view of the world. Some choose to turn the other way and remain silent. But those courageous sons and daughters of this world, whom we see on a daily basis coming out in the streets in protest to uphold human rights for all, justice and peace, we want to say the struggle continues. In a sense, it felt unlike anything that we experienced under the brutal apartheid regime here in South Africa, and yet very similar. At the height of its military prowess, it was fully backed by the Western imperialism, especially the United States of America and the United Kingdom. No South African can forget the name of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. These were completely capable and capacitated in pursuing nuclear capability with the apartheid regime of South Africa. It thought of itself as invincible, and then there was the Battle of Quito Guanabale in Angola, and the prospects of freedom in our lifetime became a distinct possibility. Many of us who understand the contributions made by the international solidarity, when you speak of the Battle of Quito Guanabale, we immediately remember our comrades, brothers in arms from Cuba, and the role they played for an individual like myself today to be able to speak before you as a free South African. Comrades and friends, it feels like that moment has arrived for apartheid Israel. And as South Africans, we somehow recognize this. Amidst the pain of a genocide, crimes against humanity, and the complicity of the global mainstream media, the intransigence of the Arab world, Palestinians are celebrating their martyrs and spurring on the resistance. Appalled by the crimes against humanity, freedom-loving people in every conceivable corner of the globe have responded in mass protest action in numbers not seen since the height of the global anti-apartheid movement in the 80s and the 90s. Comrades and friends, President Yasser Arafat rightly said that Jerusalem is not just for the Palestinian people. If ever there was a moment in history that depicts that reality, it has been on the streets, in the marches and protests and pickets that we have witnessed as Christians, Muslims and Jews, Hindus and people of faith persuasions, non-faith persuasions, and workers, students, healthcare professionals, and from all walks of life proudly flew the Palestinian flag and colors, sometimes in defiance of authorities, as at the Cape Town's festive lights, as the pro-Zionist DA acted in true apartheid Kragdagheid style in an attempt to silence our voices. They must be silenced by the people's power at the ballot in 2024. The struggle for the Palestinians has rightfully assumed center stage and captures the hearts and minds of all revolutionaries, activists, and academics, social influencers in particular. It seems that the world has finally heard Madiba's pledge to Gaza when he visited in 1995 and repeated again in 1997 on the International Day of Solidarity with Palestine that I quote, "Our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians," close quote. And as President Yasser Arafat put it, I quote, "You are all responsible for Palestine and for Jerusalem before me. Our time to complete has come, I therefore want to salute the axis of the resistance, the Al-Qassam Brigade, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, and Surla for giving hope to the internal resistance. We must strengthen unity of the oppressed at all levels. We salute the leadership of Qatar for their role in negotiating a ceasefire and opening a way for the humanitarian aid flow. May it pave the way for a lasting justice, followed by a lasting peace. I want to take this opportunity to salute the Minister Naledi Pandor and His Excellency President Ramaphosa for their unequivocal stand with the Palestinian people and for lodging a charge with the International Criminal Court for the arrest of Netanyahu and his cabinet of war criminals. This may be the lull before the storm for the internal resistance, but we as a collective must close rank and intensify our struggle for a free Palestine by isolating apartheid Israel through boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign, demanding the release of all political prisoners, such as Ahed Tamimi and her father, and thousands more that are languishing in apartheid jails. We make an unequivocal call for the right of return of all Palestinians in the diaspora, along with the unbanning of all political formations. Comrades and friends, these were the conditions precedented for any negotiations to be held in the Republic of South Africa. It should be so for Palestine. Freedom in our lifetime is possible in occupied Palestine, but it requires a deep commitment to transforming the United Nations and all multilateral institutions of global governance. In the service of Western imperialism, it will eventually follow the path of its predecessors. It's time, comrades and friends, to address the original sin of the Balfour Declaration, as the buried bodies of 530 villages massacred are demanding answers, just as the martyred innocent civilians of Gaza and the West Bank are demanding answers. The United States of America and United Kingdom must answer for what sin they have committed, and they have killed innocent civilians. They speak the same language as we do, yet the language of the oppressed, the language of resistance, and the language of defiance, and in the end, we shall sing songs of freedom. The world has awoken, and the march for a free Palestine is inevitable, as it was for us here in South Africa. No lasting peace can be built on lies, and to borrow an Orwellian quote, some animals are not more equal than others. As we conclude, comrades and friends, I want to say to the Council of Ambassadors for Arab States, as well as the Arab League of Nations, Palestinians need your support, not just in words. You can learn a lesson from your colleagues in the frontline states who supported our cause here in South Africa. They were far poorer than your nations, yet they stood the cause, stood side by side with us, and assisted us to wage an effective struggle for liberation until we defeated a brutal apartheid regime here in South Africa. I therefore want to say to all the frontline states here in the SADC region that stood the test of time, we are forever indebted to you as South Africans. Comrades and friends, allow me to invite you to honor the 10th anniversary of President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela's passing, and the world, as the world joins us in the 5th international solidarity with the Palestinians on a convention that will be held from the 2nd to the 5th of December. I therefore want to say, let Madiba's words serve as a reminder to all of us that peace and prosperity, tranquility and security are only possible if these are all enjoyed by all without discrimination. We will see you all in the convention as we have invited 150 leaders of the resistance from the Palestinian diaspora to come and engage with us on the 3rd and the 4th, and this will conclude with the national march to the union buildings where Madiba lied in state for 3 days. We will send 2 trains from Cape Town and 2 trains from Durban, and we call on all political formations, on all unions and worker formations, as well as religious and faith formations, NGOs and CBOs, to come from all walks of life and right across the landscape of our country, including the frontline states in SADC, to be part of this march as we hand over our resolution to His Excellency President Ramaphosa. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mandela. Your words are very powerful, and I have a feeling that the media here today will be sending them far and wide beyond this forum that we're in today. A fairly boring announcement, but there are 2 cars that are blocking. If you could please make your way to the parking area. There's a black 5400 Mercedes, DBBL 535D, and a silver BMW 730D, JD44PYGP. And as you can see, Ambassador Hanan, we have some fairly well-off supporters of Palestine. Okay, so I know usually we leave the most senior official to the last speaker, but Deputy Minister Alvin Botes, I know you have to leave at 1 o'clock, so I would like to ask you to come up to the stage, and then we will have a last short speech and a short film, very short film. Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Program Director. For that, welcome, Your Excellencies, the Ambassador of the State of Palestine, Ambassador Anan Shara, Your Excellency, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, Ambassador Sila Omar Abdu, Your Excellency, the Dean of the Council of Arab Ambassadors, Excellency Kabalan Frange, Excellencies, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, the Director at the UN Information Center in South Africa, Mr. Masimba Kafarniaka, Honorable Your Excellency Jose Mandla Mandela, the grandson of Madiba and a prominent member of the South Africa's parliamentary course, members of the South African government. I acknowledge members of the National Executive of Government, current and former. I acknowledge members of the Executive Council of provinces present, mayors, distinguished guests. I wish to acknowledge former liberation fighters, members of the South African armed struggle, and I wish to acknowledge, ladies and gentlemen, yourselves, which amongst others I would want to refer to as Palestine freedom fighters. Allow me to bring this message, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of President Ramaphosa and Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor, who is, as we speak, seized with matters as it relates to the cabinet proceedings. As we commemorate 46 years since the UN Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, this occasion, ladies and gentlemen, provides us with a critical opportunity to reflect and to take stock on the plight of the people of Palestine. In 1977, UNGA, the United Nations General Assembly, called for the annual observance of 29th of November as the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. On that day, ladies and gentlemen, in 1947, the Assembly adopted a resolution on the partitioning of Palestine through UN Resolution 181. The question of Palestine remained unresolved 75 years since the 1948 Nakba catastrophe. And despite the flare-ups in other regional hotspots, the Palestine question, ladies and gentlemen, remains at the core of tensions in the Middle East. Since the beginning of the developments on 7th of October, South Africa has joined the international community in expressing serious concerns following developments between Palestine and Israel. And that call, ladies and gentlemen, was underpinned by a call for de-escalation, cessation of hostilities, for peace, restraint and dialogue. What has unfolded, ladies and gentlemen, since 7th of October 2023 has seen a devastating loss of lives of innocent civilians, here amongst it, women and children. As a South African government, we mourn the loss of all lives of innocent civilians in both Palestine and Israel. We have expressed, ladies and gentlemen, our unequivocal concern on the death of the more than 15,000 Palestinians that have been massacred through a genocidal conduct as it relates to the state of Israel is concerned. It is saddening to note, ladies and gentlemen, the number of children killed, which makes up the large percentage of people killed in Palestine, both in the West Bank and in Gaza. Ladies and gentlemen, successive peace negotiations have never resolved the final status issue of the people of Palestine, which ordinarily would have led to the establishment of an independent, sovereign Palestine state. You would recall that 30 years since the 1993 Oslo Accords, the people of Palestine, through the PLO, have recognized the existence of the independent sovereign state of Israel. But this very same state of Israel has renegated, ladies and gentlemen, on the recognition of an independent, secure state of Palestine, and have been consistent to deny statehood to the Palestinian people. This, ladies and gentlemen, despite an array of UN Security Council resolutions that calls for the creation of a viable independent state of Palestine with East Jerusalem as its capital, as stipulated through UNGA and the UNSC. Our appreciation, ladies and gentlemen, is that South Africa view the state of Israel as the occupier. And that's why the South African policy perspective speak about global solidarity and to err on the side of the most vulnerable. And there should be no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, today, that we err on the side of the Palestinian people. Ladies and gentlemen, the Israeli state have consistently utilized the right of self-defense to justify their genocidal conduct as it relates to the people of Palestine. An occupying force, ladies and gentlemen, has absolutely no right nor privilege to invoke military might under the auspices of a right of self-defense. This fact, ladies and gentlemen, has been confirmed by the ICJ, the International Court of Justice. I wish, therefore, to confirm that South Africa will continue to call for the expedition of the advisory opinion, ladies and gentlemen, from the International Criminal Court, as mandated by UNGA in its 2023 December session. Ladies and gentlemen, a crime of genocide are being committed in Palestine. There must be unity of clarity in relation to that issue. Innocent people are being massacred. And we must recall, ladies and gentlemen, in Africa in 1994, where the voices of the people of the world were silent, and as Jose Mandela says, the people of the world spoke in muffled voices on the genocide that occurred in 1994 in Rwanda. It calls, ladies and gentlemen, on the Krula group, it calls on the Nordic group, it calls on the EU, it calls on the ASEAN group, it calls on all peace-loving nations, heads of missions that are organized, that are part of these different formations, to, in an unequivocal manner, raise their voices in support of the most vulnerable, the people of Palestine. We have been consistent, ladies and gentlemen, that the apartheid doctrine is a mirror image, ladies and gentlemen, of what is being applied today against the people of Palestine by the genocidal state of Israel. We use this opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to call for adherence to the two-state solution, where a state of Israel will be able to coexist next to a state of Palestine in accordance with the international recognition boundaries of 1967 with East Jerusalem as its capital, in line, ladies and gentlemen, with all relevant UN resolutions and international law. A viable and sustained peace plan for the Middle East must therefore ensure, ladies and gentlemen, that Palestine's sovereignty, its territorial integrity and economic viability is guaranteed, with sovereign equality between Palestine and Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, the collective punishment meted out by the state of Israel have to be called out. The world have to express its collective horror against the genocidal action perpetuated. In particular, the South African government wish to call on our friends in Europe, ladies and gentlemen, who are on the side of the vulnerable people of South Africa during the apartheid time. To reimagine, to reignite, and to re-agitate its voice of moral opinion. I'm raising this, ladies and gentlemen, today because Europe has led the condemnation when there was annexation of territory of the Russian Federation against the people of Ukraine. However, ladies and gentlemen, and regrettable, we have not witnessed the moral compass, voice of opinion and of reason as it relates to the Palestinian people. It is therefore an instruction point that our friends, heads of missions from Europe should lead from the front in relation to the moral struggle for self-determination of the people of Palestine. Ladies and gentlemen, Israel's prolonged occupation, subjugation, and the denial of social, political, and economic rights to the Palestinian people is unjust and a tantamount to a living nightmare. It has been one of the root causes, ladies and gentlemen, for instability in Israel and Palestine and in the entirety of the Middle East region. There can be absolute no lack of certainty, ladies and gentlemen, that the plight and the resolution of the Palestine question is integral, program director, to the resolution of the entirety of the Middle East peace process. There can be no normalization of relationship, ladies and gentlemen, with the state of Israel up until they engage in their corresponding obligation and duty to honor the commitment made during the 1993 Oslo process. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa have indeed, with a number of countries, made a submission to the International Criminal Court. And we would wish, ladies and gentlemen, that the ICC would act with an accelerated speed, pace, and commitment in the same manner, ladies and gentlemen, which the ICC chief prosecutor have acted when there was an annexation of territory in eastern Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to conclude by giving an expression of appreciation for our BRICS partners in its current form and expanded version, who complemented South Africa's initiative through President Ramaphosa, where we had an extraordinary summit of the BRICS leaders and partners convened on the 21st of November 2023. That extraordinary summit of BRICS leaders and partners, ladies and gentlemen, called for an immediate revival of the Middle East peace process. And the outcomes of the BRICS leaders and partnership summit was followed by South Africa hosting an extraordinary conference of the African Union heads of states and formers from the 27th to 28th of November 2023 in Tshwane, Pretoria, with the aim, ladies and gentlemen, to galvanize AU member states' support for the plight of the Palestinian people. Ladies and gentlemen, much has been said about the centrality of BRICS in an evolving multipolar world that negates from unipolarity, that deepens multilateralism. And it is our submission that central to the task, ladies and gentlemen, is the reform of, in particular, the United Nations Security Council as called by the BRICS 15th Summit, convened under the stewardship of South Africa. We therefore called, ladies and gentlemen, and appreciate, amongst others, members of the P5, apart from the People's Republic of China, the Russian Federation, we have seen France have called for the genocidal conduct of the State of Israel to be engaged with at the level of the UN Security Council. It is therefore our obligation as the South African government today to call on two of the other pen holders, ladies and gentlemen, on the plight of the Palestinian people, the United States of America and the United Kingdom, to equally so invoke and remember their own moral voice, to invoke and remember that they do possess a moral compass, ladies and gentlemen, for this matter of Palestine to be resolved definitively by the UN Security Council. We will continue, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of all free, loving people, to champion the cause of the Palestinian people. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to conclude by indicating correctly so that South Africa will remain firm in its conviction. It is my submission today, ladies and gentlemen, and in particular speaking to heads of missions from other countries, that today, ladies and gentlemen, calls not for strategic ambiguity, but today calls for certainty, for strong conviction based on principle, morality. That is the ideals which Nelson Mandela stood for under very difficult times. And that is the ideals which Mandla Mandela stands for today. And how you held the name of his grandfather and the hand of his grandfather requires, ladies and gentlemen, that today what you should do must be a direct reflection of the time when Nelson Mandela was still amongst us. We wish you well, ladies and gentlemen, and we wish you to always remember that our freedom as South Africa has a dialectical relationship with the freedom of the Palestinian people. In Palestine, ladies and gentlemen, you have Palestine Arabs, you have Palestine Jews, you have Palestine Christians that exists, that lives in peaceful unity. This is not an Arab struggle. This is about a struggle for just world order. This is a struggle, ladies and gentlemen, for self-determination of a people whose land has been dispossessed more than 75 years back. In any struggle of a people and of a nation, there come only two choices, ladies and gentlemen. To accept the subjugation and the silence of your voice, or to champion the cause of the oppressed people. History, ladies and gentlemen, would not be kind to those that speaks in muzzle and in half voices. On behalf of the South African Cabinet, led by President Ramaphosa, we express our message of solidarity, Ambassador Hanan, with the people of Palestine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister Botes. So we are going to watch a short 12-minute film, and I would just like to say a special word of thank you to Nadia Mir. Nadia, would you like to just stand up so we can all see you? Nadia Mir was responsible for organizing the poem and the film. Thank you. You can sit down. Nadia is the head of Shamsan, which is a South African NGO that basically promotes arts and culture to get over the message on human rights, particularly on Palestine. I remember when you brought the young person who's considered the youngest journalist in the world. Her name is Janan, right? Jihad. She came here and she did a speaking tour. You also brought her cousin, Ahed Tamimi. You may remember she's the young woman, 16, 17, with the flailing blonde hair, who was arrested in administrative detention for some time after her speaking tour in South Africa in 2017. The very sad news is 2.5 weeks ago, she was taken out of her bed from her home, and she's now facing indefinite administrative detention. And many of the people in the room will tell you in South Africa, there was 90-day detention. In her case, as a young person, it's indefinite detention. It's very sad. Nadia asked me to invite all of you. There's going to be a cultural performance this evening at the Market Theatre, downtown Johannesburg, in solidarity with the Palestinian people. The tickets are free, and it starts at 6 o'clock for anyone who would like to attend. We will now watch the short film, and then there'll just be a brief 2 more speeches, and then we're done. Thank you.
It's Palestine, the brightest land with 2 suns in its sky. But regardless of that, it's pretty dark. A lot of children dying.
Youngsters also make up more than 40% of more than 7,000 Palestinians killed so far by Israeli strikes.
There are currently more than 180 minors held in Israeli jail.
My 2-year-old son was executed in front of my eyes.
He's one of hundreds of Palestinians whose childhoods have been stolen through decades of occupation.
Since the 7th of October, we face extermination, killing, bombing falling up over our heads. All of this of front of the war. The occupation is starving us. We don't find water. الله عرف إن إحنا بنعاني ونزل لنا مية من عين. مية حلوة يا جماعة.
ألف مبروك. من وين جبت هدول الأغراض؟ زبطت معك تجيب خبز ومية مع بعض؟ يلا مبروك.
And we drink from the unusable water. We come now to shout and invite you to protect us.
Hala is only 8 years old. She's gonna grow up without any member of her family. You know, her uncles were killed, her aunts were killed.
برضو بابا استشهد، ماما استشهدت، أخويا وليد استشهد، فشلنا أنا
Till now, I am unable to talk to her. I don't know what to tell her. I don't know how she's feeling. I can never even imagine what she had to go through. You know, her sisters, her whole memory. She's only 8, and she had to live for the rest of her life without her parents and her sisters. You know.
In most places, the noise of aircraft overhead would have children scurrying with excitement to scan the skies. In Gaza, they're the sound of death in a place where childhood is already scarred by siege and war.
In the morning, in the night, there's lots of bombing, and we have to worry about the house shaking. If it shakes, it feels like it's slowly falling. And if we hear some loud news, I get scared, and mommy hug everybody, so we pretend. We are children. It's not right to do that to children.
It's Palestine, the land of peace that has never seen peace before. But its people are still resisting because they don't want to live like this anymore. scared and terrified all the time. And this should test you as an urgent sign to take immediate action and call on people to unite to transform this world from its current state and bring back the light.
Thank you very much, Nadia, and the producers of the film. I think that is really powerful. It brings to life what we've been talking about this morning. And it reminds me of the words of Mahatma Gandhi, who said the true measure of any society is in how it treats its most vulnerable. And this is just not acceptable. So I would just like to invite the last speaker before the vote of thanks from the United Nations, one of our hosts this morning, Mr. Masimba Tafranyika, to just give us a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director, Ms. Shannon Ibrahim. Let me start by recognizing Your Excellency, Ms. Hanan Jara, Ambassador of the State of Palestine to the Republic of South Africa. His Excellency, Mr. Alvin Botes, the Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Kabalan Franji, Ambassador of the Republic of Lebanon, Honorable Mr. Mandla Mandela, Ms. Jenny Mufumadi, the CEO of the Freedom Park, distinguished members of the diplomatic corps with us today, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, good afternoon. We meet today on this solemn occasion to commemorate the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. On behalf of the resident coordinator of the United Nations in South Africa, Mr. Nelson Mufu, who is unfortunately unable to be with us today, I will now share with you the message from the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, marking today's commemoration. And I quote, "This International Day of Solidarity comes during one of the darkest chapters in the history of the Palestinian people. I am horrified by the death and destruction that have engulfed the region, which is overwhelmed with pain, anguish, and heartache. Palestinians in Gaza are suffering a humanitarian catastrophe. Almost 1.7 million people have been forced from their homes, but there is nowhere that is safe. Meanwhile, the situation in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, risks boiling over. I express my sincere condolences to the thousands of families who are mourning their loved ones. This includes members of our own United Nations family in Gaza, representing the largest loss of personnel in the history of our organization. I have been clear in my condemnation of the terror attacks by Hamas on 7 October. But I have also been clear that these cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. Across the region, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency is an indispensable lifeline, delivering vital support to millions of Palestinians refugees. It is more important than ever that the international community stands by UNRWA as a source of support for the Palestinian people. Above all, this is a day of reaffirming international solidarity with the Palestinian people and their right to live in peace and dignity. That must start with a long-term humanitarian ceasefire, unrestricted access for life-saving aid, the release of all hostages, the protection of civilians, and an end to violations of international humanitarian law. We must be united in demanding an end to the occupation and the blockade of Gaza. It is long past time to move in a determined, irreversible way towards a two-state solution on the basis of United Nations resolutions and international law, with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security, with Jerusalem as the capital of both states. The United Nations will not waver in its commitment to the Palestinian people. Today and every day, let us stand in solidarity with the aspirations of the Palestinian people to achieve their inalienable rights and build a future of peace, justice, security, and dignity for all. End of quote. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I would now like to call on someone who has spent a lifetime in support of the Palestinian people, who is one of our excellent diplomats at the Department of Foreign Affairs, International Relations, someone I hold in high regard, Ambassador Ashraf Suleiman, who spent 4 years as our ambassador in Ramallah. And thank you very much. He is going to give the vote of thanks.
Program Director, Mrs. Shannon Ibrahim, you shouldn't have said that. Yes, we all have a role to play, and this is part of our DNA, as Comrade Mandla Mandela would say. But let me recognize Deputy Minister Alvin Botas. He keeps me really busy. So I do what I do because of him. So, and Ambassador General, Hanan Gerard, Ambassador Kabalan, Franjay, High Commissioners, and Excellencies, and members of the Diplomatic Corps, the CEO, Ms. J. Mufmadi, with whom we work very well, and we've got some, we want to recognize the presence of Palestine in this park of ours. And we are working closely with her, so hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll have something that you will look forward to. Comrades, yes, also the representative of the United Nations in South Africa. Colleagues, my job is not to speak to you, but also just to acknowledge and thank primarily all of you who have come as honored guests to this event today. I hope next year when we do come, we will come here and say we are not closer to a Palestinian state. We will celebrate a Palestinian state. So we look forward to that. There are so many people to thank. And as I look at you, I even think of some of my colleagues here, and I'm sure they wouldn't want me to mention the name, who make the journey to Palestine, contribute to the humanitarian effort. There are some people, as we are sitting here today, at DERCO and assisting us with a collective humanitarian effort that we want to take to the people of Gaza in particular, and of course, also to the rest of Palestine. So I'd also like to thank Mr. Amir and Shamsad for bringing in highlighting the case of the present situation in Palestine. So hopefully we leave this place more enriched, and we hope that you go here and carry the message of Palestine to those closest to you and those who are not as close to you. It is, as DERCO, we are indeed happy to be part of this program annually, together with the United Nations. It is part of the unfinished business that we need to hopefully, as the Deputy Minister had indicated in his speech, Minister Pandor today, yes, he's attending cabinet, but also in cabinet, the issue of Palestine reigns very, very important, and I think there'll be some important directives given to us to implement in the coming days. So with that, Program Director, I'd like to thank all of us for attending today's function.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Suleiman. I'd also like to thank Hasuna Al-Jami, who's an official here from the counselor from the Embassy of Palestine, for all the work he and Diana did in putting this event together today. And I just want to thank you all for coming, for making the time, many of you from Joburg on such a hot afternoon, and for coming all the way from Cape Town. And it means a lot to every one of us who cares about Palestine. And Ambassador Hanan, I'm sure you realize that we are all with you. And also to Hasuna, who has lost many members of his family in this war so far. You're not alone, and we are always with you. Thank you. That's the end.